So, I mean, like generally in Singapore itself, car ownership has always been something of great debates and it's quite diverse as well in terms of generally how people view car ownership because of course one thing is that being a small country itself, generally our public transportation is generally quite well connected.
Yeah.
And but of course the contentious issues is that there is this COE, there's high cost as well in terms of car ownership. So over here in our session today, we'll be talking and discussing about different perspective on car ownership and some pros and some cons, and as well as the financial implications for car ownership in Singapore. So yeah.
Yep. Okay, so with regards to car ownership, right, Dylan? So what to you, right? What do you think is the cost, right, that is involved in purchasing a car in Singapore, and probably the ongoing cost to car ownership in Singapore?
So what is interesting is that of course we can actually break down car ownership into two components. One is the fixed cost, and one is the running cost itself. So one thing that's unique about Singapore car ownership, right, is of course certificate of entitlement, the COE itself, which something is basically giving you that certificate to actually drive a car on the road itself, which is actually uniquely to Singapore itself, to moderate car ownership itself. So this is something that at this moment in time, it actually adds a significant cost onto that overall totality of a car ownership in Singapore. And beyond that, of course, naturally, we also have to take in consideration the vehicle cost as well.
Yeah.
That itself, is another area that with the high tax in Singapore itself, as well as GST and all these things, that component itself is also significant. And we also have this additional registration fee. So it's a tax on the open market value of a car in Singapore itself. So that's another fixed overheads that we will expect. Of course, beyond that itself, there will be running costs that we should be concerned about as well. So what are the running costs that we should be concerned about, right? Will also includes like our motor insurance.
Yep.
Motor insurance, because when you own a car itself, it's not just you can just drive on the road. Of course, we have to have a motor insurance that is a running cost year on year. You have to renew that motor insurance cost. Yeah. And then beyond that itself, there are other costs as well, like our season parking. Maybe sometimes you commute to work with your vehicle itself. You have to actually consider season parking in your residential area as well as season parking in your office car park itself. So that will also add on running costs as well. Beyond that itself, we also have to take into consideration maintenance costs as well, because I mean, like, ultimately car is a vehicle that at some point in time you have to regularly service it to make sure that it doesn't break down significantly to the point that you have to be scrapped. So that itself, there are two areas that generally we have to look at: the fixed cost that you have to be upfront, at the same time the running cost that at some point in time constantly you have to actually pay to maintain. And of course we also have to consider that on the Singapore road itself, there's also at certain areas of high traffic congestion itself, we will also have to take in consideration ERP as well, which will also add into another level of cost on a daily basis.
Yes,
right. So if you are working in some CBD areas, whatever, so that will also add in a running cost to you on a day-to-day basis as well. And of course we hasn't even talked about parking fees as well. These days a lot of places, sometimes when you're driving your families to have a good meal itself, you also have to think aware that the shopping malls itself these days, the parking fees are actually also quite substantial as well. So these are areas that when we talk about the car ownership itself, cost itself, we have to look at the fixed and the running costs.
Right. So, but now that we are more aware about the running cost, especially of owning a car in Singapore, based on your observations, right, what are some of the options that is available nowadays for those who do not own a car, but from time to time requires a car, to travel around, families and all. So what do you do?
So for this wise, right, I feel that generally there are a lot of alternatives, and then the fact that I think Singapore itself, right, these days, right, I think that we are actually very well connected. And I remember back in those days, when we are still children and teenagers itself, I do remember that we only have two lines. We only have the red line, the north-south line, and the east-west line. That's all. But over the years, connectivity, especially the fact that MRT, mass rapid transport, right, is actually the backbone fundamentals, transportation network within Singapore itself, right, and it has actually expanded rapidly over the last 2 decades itself. So now we have more than six lines already actually at this moment in time. So I mean, like, if you look at that itself, in terms of the proximity of the central business district, or we talk about connectivity within residential area as well, I think generally it is quite well connected. So I think that the primary mode of transport for public transport itself, I think definitely will be MRT itself. Then of course beyond that itself, we can also look at some other things like these days with technologies, we do have different mode of transportation as well beyond just taxi. Back in those days itself, we have the trouble to have to constantly flag for a taxi. That's the only way. Or in some malls itself, you'll be there's a taxi stand, but this day we don't need to do that. There are apps like Tada, apps like Grab, ComfortDelGro, and all these things where we can easily, at the palm of our hand, right, easily within a span of let's say conservatively within a span of about 5 minutes, you'll be able to actually successfully book a car in most scenario. So that is also added level of convenience. So instead of having to really own the car itself, the fact that we are able to easily access to all these apps, private hires, public hires itself, to actually access a mode of transport from point A to point B itself. I think that is really quite convenient. And of course, beyond that itself, we also have those car sharings as well, which me personally, I do frequently use, like those car sharing like Trapcar and GetGo. These are two. So me personally, I don't really own a car. So for me itself, when time to time where I exclusively need to use a car itself, for my family, maybe that location is probably a place of inconvenience, I can always get car sharing to actually drive me around, or in certain times itself drive my family around with. So I think that's very convenient as well. In fact, for these two car sharing app itself, right, it's actually at the convenience of my doorstep, meaning that I can actually access to these car sharings, right, just at the car park beside my home. And that convenient. And I think this is also one sector that's actually also rapidly expanding the network in Singapore itself. So in time to come, I think that is also more environmental friendly as well. Because I mean, being able to actually only use the car when you need to, also reduce the footprints of vehicles on the road itself. So I think in time to come, as it become more and more saturated and more convenient and accessible itself, I think in time to come, there might be a shifting trend towards that as well. So that is also one very, very important and a growing section that will in time to come take out a significant market share of the car on the road itself. In fact, these days, even if you're looking on the road itself, if we observe a busy road itself, actually every 5 to 10 minutes we will actually see one car sharing vehicles on the road itself. So I think that's the frequency of car sharing that we talk about. And of course, the fact that beyond that itself, I mean, ultimately Singapore itself is a very, very small country. So in terms of transportation wise itself, beyond that itself, there are other avenues as well, like bicycles. So that's another mode of transportation that's also increasingly more prevalent in Singapore itself. And also there are actually bicycle sharing as well, bike sharing as well, that is also quite accessible across Singapore. So you're just going a short distance, like 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers itself, from time to time, rather than going on to being crowded out by the buses or the public transport itself. Sometimes it might be easier and faster and more efficient to actually just cycle from point to point B. And the fact that these days itself, there's a lot of bicycle tracks as well. So there's a pedestrian pathway, there's a bicycle pathways, or those that is actually traveling light itself. So I think in terms of the network, Singapore is actually gradually shifting towards a maturity in terms of that phase where car is good to have, but it's not a necessity itself.
Okay, yeah.
So from my point of view, I think that is what I think is from my point of view that's something that is very positive. And for you, Daniel, for yourself itself, right? What do you think that generally? What's your opinion of our government initiatives toward car-like urban mobility?
Okay, with regards to this question, I think all in all, as an individual, I've observed over the years commuting in Singapore from different regions of the island has become much easier in compared to 90s, the early 2000s. Right, these days, number one, like you mentioned, our MRT network is becoming more and more comprehensive. I mean, thanks to the authorities for expanding the train network. So this is fundamentally public transport is fundamentally what gets us around, which I think contributes to the initiative of going car-like.
Yeah.
Now, next is the option of bicycle, and the option of bicycle across the island, we are seeing some concrete initiatives taking places, like certain heartland areas encouraging bicycle lanes and designated bicycle lanes, for cyclists as a mode of transport. It also it probably goes hand in hand to reduce carbon footprint as well.
Yes.
So that is a good initiative. But however, in terms of efficacy, the full-fledged efficacy, I think in the years to come, we should be able to see this initiative coming into more concrete results or benefits for us. Well, because for me, I stay within the proximity of a city area, or rather city fringe area.
Yeah.
So this area, the roads gets really dense, and during peak hours and
yes.
Even non-peak hours, certain roads, it does get heavy traffic because that's the main road that leads to some of the areas within Singapore.
Yep.
So over in this area, what I will probably hope to actually see more is the designated bicycle lanes that if we can see to actually come to fruition, because that will be something that's going to be very obvious in terms of this initiative. So apart from bicycles, we rollerblades. No, that's not so common. But the thing is, I was in KL earlier this year, and I see that within their KLCC area, right, they do have these what do you call it? Is those electric scooters?
Oh, okay.
Which is on rent.
Yes. Okay.
Which is on rent.
Okay.
I find it quite a new and fresh idea, which I don't see in Singapore. We have those bicycles that's on rent, but theirs is those electronic scooters that is within the KLCC city itself.
Okay.
So you see people zipping from point to point within the city. I find that it is a good idea that we probably could consider to adopt. But I mean, of course, this is not so much on the government side, but of course, pairing up with some private organizations or corporate companies to come up with all this. Yeah, so generally, that's my sense of the government initiative. Going car-like, yes. So
that's quite positive. And do you think that the opportunity costs actually outweigh the positives of car ownership itself?
Okay, for this, I think I will look at it from two different perspectives. The first perspective are for those who don't really require a car.
Okay.
That means a car is a good to have, and but it's not a must-have. And for this individual, they are probably more concerned about aspects such as saving up for the long term or saving up for preparing for retirement. Then for this, in this aspect, we will skew more towards the financial perspective of things. So if you were to take an assumption of a normal Asian car, there's a I think currently, generally, depreciation is about 15K. So 15K taking into the miscellaneous ongoing costs that contributes to it. Let's give you a ballpark figure between 20 to 20K. So if you're able to not go into car ownership and invest this amount, 20-25K, over a period of time with, let's say, a 5% return year on year compounded, that would sum up to a very neat nest egg at the end of 10 years. All right, if we assume that this car you're going to drive for 10 years and not renew the COE further. And with that in mind, right, this tidy sum of nest egg is probably going to be a substantial sum to fund your retirement. If not, we can also work along the idea of probably reaching your retirement objective age earlier by, I don't know, somewhere between 3 to 5 years, 7 years. Yeah, so that's the math behind it. On the other hand, for those individuals who requires a car for the purpose of making a living, then I think this may not be so relevant to them, because the car itself is generally income generating for them. So that wouldn't be so applicable for them. So that's my point for the question you've mentioned. Yeah.
So personally for you, what are your thoughts on considering car ownership in Singapore? So I think all this, right, I mean, today we did this sharing, and I feel that ultimately it requires actually a careful consideration as well, because I think especially from a financial perspective of things itself, because I mean we have to actually weigh the cost versus the benefits of actually taking the plunge into car ownership itself. So it's not something that you can take for lightly just because of your wants. I think the important thing is also to actually recognize whether there's actually the needs actually outweighs the wants itself. And it's compelling enough for you to actually make a decision to actually make the call to actually purchase a car. So I mean, like, because I mean, ultimately today in the earlier section we also shared about the upfront cost that it will actually be, as well as the running cost as well. It's not like you can just buy something and then use it and then just be a depreciating asset, because ultimately beyond the depreciating asset, you must know that there is a running cost that actually throughout the entire span of a car ownership itself. So that will take into consideration as well. So from a financial perspective, I think it's important that that decision that you made to actually purchase a car actually align with your financial long-term goal as well, because otherwise because there's actually a significant trade-off between owning a car and not owning a car, and the potential financial savings that you might be able to save, and it will actually be beneficial in the long run as well. So instead of an instant gratification, it's more like a delayed gratification. So ultimately, it's important to sit down, with your financial advisors to actually make sure that you actually make an informed choice, and actually also taking into consideration significantly a financial perspective as well, to make sure that when you decided to make that choice, it's a well-informed choice, and and the fact that that the responsibility of the longer term as well, which is your retirement, is not implicated or being compromised because of that decision that you made today. So just to round up today, I mean, like, for this session itself, it's an interesting topic, because it's a contentious topic that constantly a Singaporean is also going through their mind as well. So we'll wrap up today's session. And thank you so much for your time today. Yeah, thank you.
If you like this video, do click on the like button. And if you see the bell icon, all right, do subscribe for more videos from our content.
Yes.
All right, see you in the next. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.